when I first started nursing in Adelaide, everyone used to think I was an Italian. People even call me Maria.
Marie Bejah Williams of South Australia is descended from Afghan camel driver Bejah Dervish, who emigrated down under to help open up the outback and work camels in the 19th century. Between 1840 and 1900, over 10,000 camels and 2,000 workers made the voyage from lands now known as Pakistan, Iran, India, and Afghanistan. Collectively, these men were known as Afghans, but they were actually a mix of cultures which included Pashtun, Punjabi, and Baluch, among others.
To me, I was just branded an Afghan, but as far as Pop and Dad goes, I guess that they just accepted it because that's what the government did, called them all Afghans.
One of the towns the Afghans settled in was Marree. There's a cemetery with European, Aboriginal, and Afghan sections there, and the railway line that ran through Marree brought prosperity, but also delineated division.
In the olden days, probably in my mum's days, there were 3 parts to Marree. There was over the other side of the line was where the white people lived. This side of the line is where the Afghans lived, and down further from out here was where the Aboriginals lived. So, you know, it was fairly racist in a way, although my generation, we're all really good friends. You know, like regardless of whether they were white kids or they were Afghan kids or Aboriginal kids, we're very close. We still are. So that's one, from growing up in Marree, that's one thing I really appreciate, that we've stuck together.
Marree affectionately calls her grandfather Pop, and Bejah Dervish was a Baluchi who came to Australia seeking opportunity. He married a European woman. Many Afghans left, but Bejah stayed.
There must have been an incentive, mustn't there, for them to come. To, you know, the first lot of camels came out for Thomas Elder, but there must have been some kind of an incentive. They wanted, say, 2,000 people to come and to open up the country, like the telegraph line and the railway line. But a lot of the people who came out with the camels went home. They didn't want to stay because they couldn't bring their women, they couldn't bring any family. Some of them stayed and married into Aboriginal people, to Aboriginal women. Some married into the European women.
Bejah passed down the camel trade to Marie's father Abdul, known as Jack, and Jack continued camel freighting through the early 20th century. Strings of 80 to 100 camels were common in those days.
All of the commodities that the stations needed, they all went on the camels. So they would go up with all the goods, you know, like the food and what have you. And then they would bring something back, which was usually wool. Well, my dad used to bring the wool back from Cordilla Downs, which is a big station up north. And anything that they wanted brought back, they brought it back.
Not only did the camel tradition carry on, but so too did the family's faith, in places like Broken Hill.
I've got a cousin there who has got the most fantastic collection of different Afghan relics, and he looks after the mosque. And there's an actual Muslim part of the cemetery, and that's where my grandmother and grandfather and all are buried, and he looks after that. I mean, he's getting old too, he's 81 or 2, but he does a good job by trying to preserve the history.
Still, Marie's parents encouraged their children to assimilate.
There were 5 of us, and Mum and Dad used to send us to when the ministers came up to school, they sent us to every denomination. If whatever church came into town, we had to go and have a listen. So we've got a broad sense of all the religions.
And while Marree didn't grow up speaking Baluch with her father or grandfather, the older Afghans did keep some traditions alive behind old Bejah's house in the date palms that are now just a memory.
This house down here had a huge date palm plantation that Pop had. And they used to sit down there around a fire drum, you know, like a fire bucket, and they would all smoke there, whatever they smoked, and I really think it was opium or something. You know, it was because, and we weren't allowed to go near them, but Pop used to have a garden just in front of his room was just the first room there, and he used to have a garden that was sort of locked with gates locked on it, and I'm sure he grew opium poppies.
While one of Marie's siblings was named Abdul like their father, others were given English names like William and Christine.
At the time when I was born, there was a song called Marree, and Dad loved the song and he named me Marree. Not one word, but two. Rose and then Marie.
As a young girl, Marree had her own camel.
We used to all have a camel each. I had one called Orange because of its colour. Down the back here is what we call the camel yard. Back of this old house down here, we had a camel yard, and that's where they were all around the place. But there would have been camels wandering everywhere.
Between the 1920s and the 1950s, changing attitudes and new technology brought an end to camel caravans across the outback. Defying the Australian Camels Destruction Act of 1925, the Afghans turned their camels loose, creating feral herds that would eventually number in the hundreds of thousands. Marie's father was among many who simply could not bring themselves to destroy their camels.
The White Australia policy came, and they actually imposed a fee of 9 pence for every camel. So when the trucks came in and the railway, and they let them go. They didn't want them here anymore.
With no familiar work available, the Afghans went to work for the railway. The line they worked on would one day be known as the Afghan Express, in homage to the Afghans. But Marree has a different, perhaps more colorful tale.
There was an old Afghan on the train, and he wanted to pray. So when the train stopped, he got his praying mat, started praying, and they held the train up for him, and that's how it was called again, the Afghan Express.
Marie's father, Jack, died in 1969. Following the camel's release a generation earlier, and with Jack's generation passing, the tradition of the Afghan camel drivers also ended. The town of Marree now celebrates its unique camel history with the annual Marree Camel Cup. Marree also recognizes the role the group played in its 19th century rush to development with a small park that sits alongside the railroad tracks. Just as Australia makes strides to acknowledge the role Aboriginals have played on the continent, so too is there a newly placed historical importance on immigrant groups like the Afghan cameleers.
There seems to be a lot more talk about the Afghan cameleers just recently, or in the last 10 years.
Well, the Afghan descendants are fewer and fewer, and despite racist legislation of the last century, one legacy remains. They're camels.
They let them go. So a lot of them went out this way, ours went this way, onto what they called the common. And a lot of other people all around Australia just let them go into the desert. So look what's happened now. I always say to people, you know, that's why there's so many feral camels. Blame the government, not the Afghans.